Hello. Right, I'm just going to check this is actually recording. By the way, the software I've got only records in 15-minute segments, so...
we might have to take breaks. Oh, we've got the clock
exactly.
here.
Yeah, I'll give you a warning at say 40. Yeah, I'll just give you a warning at about 14 minutes, and then we can sort of cut it off and start back from where we left off. I did that with my interview with Alex, and it seemed to work. Seemed to work pretty well.
Yes, that shouldn't be a problem. Okay then. My position is as follows. False rape allegations exist. There is no doubt about that whatsoever. However, excuse me, can we just cut that and start again?
Okay. Do you want to start with your proper YouTube intro thing?
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, it just throws me off when I don't say hello there. This is James. It's the stupidest little kind of OCD thing I have.
Go for it.
Okay. Hello there, this is James Scruff. I can't even... What the fuck? I can't even say my username.
You've said that like a billion times.
I know! And that's why I'm saying, what the fuck?
Take 50 trillion.
Right. Okay, just start with you okay, right. Just start with a normal kind of, today I'm here with James Ascroft, Ujames 1978, and we're going to be discussing the definition of rape and false rape allegations. So, James, if you want to start it, that would be...
Okay.
Yeah.
Hello everybody, James here, how are you doing? So today I'm here with Ujames 78, Ujames 1978, see, you're starting me off now.
Exactly.
And today we're going to be talking about rape and false rape accusations.
Okay, so to begin at the beginning, false rape allegations exist. That is an undeniable fact. However, I hope you, James, and everyone else watching this video can agree that the society declaring that a woman who wears a short skirt or gets drunk or is raped by her boyfriend or her husband, so on and so forth, is asking for it, in inverted commas. That we live in a society in which, unless you were attacked by a total stranger in the middle of the night, then there is this kind of... there is an assumption against the woman that this is the reason why so many rapes go unreported. This is the reason why so few rapists are ever convicted. There are false rape allegations, but the 2 points are, first of all, what is the definition of rape? Not legally, but in people's minds, in the jury's minds, in the minds of the police, in the mind of society. If we regard it as non-consensual sex, then a woman drunk, passed out at a party, having sex, and a guy having sex with her, that is rape. But,
absolutely.
But if we have this kind of, she was drunk, she was wearing a short skirt, she shouldn't have gone there. She went to a party with a bunch of football players. She must have known what was going to happen. The kind of Steubenville defence. Then, yes, then the whole of society could turn around and call that a false rape allegation. You just wanted sex and changed your mind. False rape allegation. So, yes, there are cases in which men are deliberately set up. They are deliberately entrapped into having sex with a woman, and then the woman cries rape. But in so many other cases, in almost every rape case, to be honest, it is the word of the victim versus the word of the defendant. Mm-hmm. So, again, this is a massive issue. So, bearing in mind the reality that we do live in a culture in which a woman who was wearing a short skirt was drunk, etc., is said to be asking for it. A world in which they are already afraid to go to the police because they know it's just going to be her word against that of her attacker. MRAs stated repeatedly in videos, in comments, the facts that false rape allegations ruin lives, again and again, drumming it into people's skulls, declaring it openly. And yes, again, it is a fact. But it does seem that every time that someone mentions rape, an MRA or someone else replies that false... yes, that's true, rape is a terrible crime, but false rape allegations ruin men's lives. Yes, and regardless of the intent, the question is, what effect is that having on society? For example, the media frenzy about terrorism after 9/11. One of the effects of that was a rise in Islamophobia and hate crimes against Muslims. Was that the intention? No. But it was the result of the media constantly reminding people that Muslims committed the most horrific terrorist atrocity in human history. So, given the fact that we already live in a society in which a woman who is drunk or wearing a short skirt is quote-unquote asking for it, a society in which it is almost always the word of the victim against the word of the attacker, pointing out that false rape allegations ruin men's lives, false rape allegations ruin men's lives, like a broken record. I sent you one example of a comment that I received stating that. But
you did, but yeah, okay, sorry, carry on.
But there are several others on my channel. You insisted that no, he was probably just a bitter person who was falsely accused of rape, but still, even if he had nothing to do with the MRA, that doesn't alter the fact that he was stating the same thing. That had gotten into his head. He had heard the MRA message, and he said, yes, that was the message that he took away from it. Not that false rape allegations are an equally terrible crime that must be dealt with just as seriously as actual rape, but that men are falsely accused of rape, men's lives are destroyed, men are driven to suicide by false rape allegations, etc. And so that is my ultimate concern. What is the motive of many people who call themselves MRAs, or people who might not have anything to do with the men's rights movement, but are parroting this same line? Are they actually fighting for the rights of men, or are they equal treatment of men, the recognition of the fact that this does happen, or are they hoping to increase the burden of fear and shame on women, on any victim of rape, that insists, making them even more afraid to go to the police unless they were beaten, unless they were held at knife points? That was another thing which I mentioned in the text discussion before I called you, James. Sorry, the resistance requirements. Even if people aren't actively calling for the resistance requirements, saying, well, it wasn't rape if you didn't fight back, if you were drunk, is the same thing as having the resistance requirements on the statute books. It doesn't make that much of a difference. And even leaving aside the intentions, even if the intentions of MRAs are as pure as the driven snow, what effect does constantly reminding people that, yes, false rape allegations exist, false rape allegations are made, men's lives are destroyed by false rape allegations, a mantra. No matter how unintended it may be, what effect does that have on the victims of rape, on the people who deal with rape cases, on society as a whole? Is it just increasing the suspicion? Is it just stacking the deck against women even more? So...
Okay, before I get into my stance, I'd just like to ask you two other questions. Firstly, what would you say, at an estimate, is the rate of false accusations which end in a prosecution?
I can't say off the top of my head, but I would insist...
No, ballpark figure, you know.
Ballpark figure. Again, though, I don't believe that this is a question of statistics. At the end of the day, even if everyone agreed, absolutely, 100%, that the number of false rape allegations resulting in a conviction or resulting in the destruction of a man's life was 50%, 60%, 70%. The question is, how do we deal with that? How do we deal with that? And B, how do we do so without putting an insurmountable burden of proof on the woman?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I do think it's a matter of statistics to some degree. I mean, you know, if somebody thought that, say, 1 in 500,000 accusations was false. Just for example, and then it went to court, and it was the victim's word, the accuser's word against the alleged rapist.
Mm-hmm.
Then, you know, if they thought that it was a 1 in 500,000 chance, then they're going to think, well, the chance that he's innocent is so astronomically low, then, well, we're just going to side with her. Or if it was the other way round, the opposite would happen.
Exactly. So I do see your point to a certain extent, but remembering the fact that we do already live in a culture in which people declare she asked for it, in which 60% of rapes go unreported. I hope you'll agree with that statistic there, for the very reason that it is her word against his, that there is no solid evidence one way or the other, and we've reached the 14-minute mark, so...
We have, yeah. We've still got a little bit of time. I'd probably say that it's somewhere around 50-60% of rapes go unreported. Probably varies from country to country, state to state, age of the victim, all kind of things like that. But yeah, I'd say it probably is around the 50-60% mark. And would you like to give a ballpark figure for the number of false accusations in total, which don't necessarily lead to a conviction?
I remember you made a video about it, but I can't remember the exact statistic which you gave once you gave the mean rather than the grossly inflated statistics. I think it was something like 10%, 20%.
Well, from basically combining all the studies together, adding up all the positive cases and dividing that by all the negative cases, it gave about 12.8%. But it could be a bit lower than that. It could be higher than that.
Also, going back to my original statement, how do we, not only as individuals, but as society, as the justice system, as the people who are collecting this data, define a false rape allegation? And again, going back to my drunk girl at a footballer's party analogy, she would say rape. The men involved, the society, the police, the judge could say false rape allegation. You shouldn't have gone to the party if you didn't know what was going to happen, you naive girl. So, and again, there was no citation for this in the comment, but today a comment on a video by Hannibal the Victor stating that one MRA who he talked to was referring to a source which classed any, which defined any false rape allegation as a rape allegation not made within 24 hours of the crime. So, again, I'm not sure if that's true or not, but it just goes to show how the definition of a false rape allegation can vary so dramatically. Because, again, we cannot agree as a society as a whole what rape actually is. We all know that rape is non-consensual sex, but what is consensual sex? Getting back to what I was saying before you had to go off there. Basically, whilst your argument that if a person believes that only one person in every 500,000 is falsely accused of rape, then that will skew the scales, that will tip the scales of justice against them. The other important issue to remember, bearing in mind the example that I gave earlier of the media frenzy surrounding 9/11 leading to an increase in Islamophobia and hate crimes against Muslims. Mm-hmm. People don't focus on the statistics. They are not rational. They are not logical. They hear the words feminist conspiracy, government stripping men of their rights, an organised campaign to victimise and abuse men, false rape allegations ruin lives, false rape allegations ruin lives, false rape allegations ruin lives, and it sticks. It sticks in their subconscious. It sticks on an emotional level. This is the reason why prejudice exists in the first place. One example, one person doing one thing causes us to judge anyone who is similar to that person in the same way for the rest of our lives. So, whilst it is right and necessary to raise the facts that something around 12.5% of all rape allegations are false, and that yes, false rape allegations do ruin lives. Doing so in such a blunt, confrontational manner, any time that a person talks about rape, on YouTube, receiving comments, but false rape allegations ruin lives, but false rape allegations ruin lives, but false rape allegations ruin lives. Regardless of the intention, it comes down to a battle of sympathies in each individual's subconscious mind. Do you sympathise with the victim, or do you sympathise with the defendant? The person who we assume is the perpetrator, the person who we assume was the victim in that case. So we talked about people who are bitter, people.
Before you move on, can I just respond to what you said there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, these cases need to be dealt with on a case-to-case basis, and I'm sure we both agree with
Absolutely.
that. And I think that it's incredibly insensitive at the absolute least to say that when somebody's sharing their own personal story of being abused. But there are many times when I think this really does need to be drummed into people's heads. You see in the news constantly, about stories of people being raped before it goes to court. The papers treat the man as guilty until proven innocent. They are allowed to report on. They're allowed to report on the alleged rapist, but they have to keep the alleged victim's identity secret. And you go into the comments of any video where somebody's alleging being raped, regardless of whether it's right or wrong. It's absolutely jam-packed with comments about how that person should be locked up for the rest of their life. How if it was if it was my sister, I'd fucking kill them, and that kind of thing. And in that case, yeah, they haven't been proven to be guilty, and so people do need to be reminded that at that stage, it is merely an accusation.
Mm-hmm. But I would just like to point out though. I'm not sure about whether the papers do. Well, I would argue that the papers do, as you say there, engage in trial by media in any crime, and this kind of hang the bastard, hanging too good for him's response is common in most hideous is a common reaction to most, if not all, hideous crimes. Vigilante violence is threats of vigilante violence is widespread, so these are flaws in society and in the justice system itself. So, indeed. Rather than pointing out that false rape allegations ruin lives, etc., or constantly reminding people of examples of how false rape allegations have ruined lives, simply pointing out we don't know. It could be false. The guy could be found innocent. That is all that we really need to do. But again, this goes back to the whole sympathy for the woman versus sympathy for the man issue that I mentioned before. The idea that if you're not attacking, you're defending. If you're not defending, you're attacking. You're on one side or you're on the other. This is a subconscious human trait. Without even realizing it, we take sides. We fall into a confrontation when none exists. So, for example, I think we both agree, my friend, that moderate progressive MRAs and moderate progressive feminists are fighting for the same cause. They are just doing so from different sides of the line in the sand. That they can work together to achieve their mutual aims. However, the radicals on both sides are all people who call themselves MRAs. I describe them as anti-feminists. They are attacking each other needlessly, and again, this whole question of prejudging someone to be guilty. It's true in the case where a white man is... this was a topic of one of my recent videos. It's not a question of the scales of justice being tipped in favour of women or against men or against black people. It depends entirely on who society has more sympathy for at the time. You know, a woman comes onto YouTube claiming that she was raped, claiming that she was a victim, claiming that she's a victim of domestic violence. The emotional response kicks in, and everyone feels sympathy for them. Anyone who raises a dissenting voice at that point is siding with the attacker. Vanessa, Happy Atheist, on this Happy Atheist 76 on YouTube, she mentioned that on a Facebook comment, a man was accused of being a peeping Tom, and everyone was saying, "Oh, I beat the shit out of him," blah blah blah. And yes, exactly the same thing. She just said, "Excuse me, he hasn't been convicted of anything yet." "Oh, you must be his girlfriend." What? Or the whole...
I hope he's not.
The whole Ash and Della thing here on YouTube a year ago. Calm down. You're not helping anyone by going after Ash's daughter. "Oh, you're defending him. You're apologising for cyber rape." But the same thing would happen if a black man killed a black man killed a white man, or a black man killed a Muslim, or a black man killed a hooker, etc. The scales of social prejudice tip depending on the situations.
Yeah.
So for either feminists or MRAs or black people or Muslims or anyone else to claim that the scales of justice are deliberately being tipped against them is largely absurd, to be quite honest.
Well, I've got quite a lot of things to respond to there. Where do I start?
Okay.
MRAs and feminists working together, they're more moderate. I have absolutely zero problem with moderate feminists, but they aren't the ones who are running the movement. You look if you go into academia, they're almost exclusively radical, or they justify the radicals' behaviour with their silence. I don't know if you've seen the debate "Is Feminism Sexist?", where the feminist was blaming all violence on men, or nearly all violence on men, and when it turns out that there's a high percentage of women who are violent as well, well, that must be because they're doing it in self-defence. Even when it came to lesbian relationships, when she was questioned on that and the high level of violence there, she blamed that on one of them being socialised with a masculine role. We've got that legislation which is going through in Wales, blaming all violence on masculinity. You've got the Duluth model, which is basically run in, with a variation of that's run in virtually all domestic violence shelters, which runs off exactly the same principle.
The point. This is one reason why I'm really looking forward to a much deeper discussion, hopefully including Going Rampant, if she's available.
Yeah.
Because that is the first issue that I wrote, which I drafted in the discussion document which I sent you. The fact that men are the fact that the stereotype, the archetype, the subconscious assumption that men are strong, women are weak, men are the warriors, women are the nurturers, etc., 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 is as old as human civilization itself. It is neither the product of feminism nor nor anything else in recent history. This assumption that all violence is committed by men, that women are always the victims, it didn't just come out of nowhere. Andrea Dworkin didn't just sit down one day and say, "Oh, I hate men. I'm going to write a book and start a and turn this women's liberation movement into a man-hated misandric machine." But so again, it's all the question of social attitudes. The idea that women should literally rather die than be raped. That if she didn't fight back against the guy with a knife, then she must have asked for it in some way. Depending on where you go in the world and how far back in time you look, that idea is still there to some extent. But hence the whole point about the drunk girl at the party. Well, if you didn't want sex, then why did you go there in the first place? Well, maybe just to go to a party. What, wearing that skirt? So, on the one hand, we have the ancient and universal stereotype that men are the aggressors, that men are the abusers, that men are the dominants. On the other, we have the equally ancient and equally universal stereotype that women's sexuality is something to be ashamed of, something to be locked away, that a woman who doesn't want to be labelled as a whore must literally rather die than be raped. If she is raped, then she wanted it. Then she must have done something to bring it upon herself. This is the number one challenge for rape counsellors and the people who are working to overcome their rape, regardless of whether they are male or female. The idea, what did I do to deserve this? What did I do to bring it upon myself? You did nothing. It was the attacker who chose to manipulate and emotionally abuse you. Remember, rape is a crime of power. Rapists often deliberately target people who are weak and vulnerable. So, not only physically but emotionally. But so yes, it is. I absolutely agree. The widely held perception that domestic violence is only ever committed by men against women and children, total bullshit. However, that is not the result of some feminist conspiracy. The idea that men are violent and women are not is as old as dirt.
Yeah. Okay. I agree that those ideas have been around for as pretty much as long as human history, and probably even before. And I suppose you probably agree that historically women were protected at expense of their agency, and while men were given certain freedoms but were treated as disposable.
Yes.
Okay.
Again, though, if we're talking about the lowest rungs of society, the people for whom life was nasty, brutish, and short, men and women were regarded as relatively disposable. But women had few rights, but neither did men.
Oh yeah, class was a factor, but gender certainly a factor as well. I suppose it depends on the exact culture, whether or not class or gender were a bigger factor.
Baby girls in China today being starved to death. Throughout history, childbirth being fatal either to the mother or the child, in many cases both. So again, men being disposable, women being disposable in a different way. Yeah.
Certainly there are many cases where women have been disposable, but in general it affects men. It affects men a lot more. Men were expected to give their lives up in order to protect women. The women.
But again, that isn't something that was imposed upon society.
Okay. Right. And those ideas are ancient. However, when it comes
not only ancient but instinctive. Remember, our closest relatives, surviving relatives, the great apes. It is the men who fight to protect to protect the women.
I agree. Yeah, I agree that it is instinctual. Responding to that, I want to get on to something else as well. But there's lots of instincts we have which have served us extremely well in the past, but today are not helpful at all.
Exactly.
Instincts like fat and sugar served us brilliantly in the past when food was a lot harder to come by. Today, it means that a lot of us are getting extremely obese and damaging our health.
And talking more about society rather than individuals, the instinct which causes us to be prejudiced, to judge things at first sight. Again, it helps us to survive, but no.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, even something like racism. You come across somebody from another tribe, having a level of distrust there would have been a positive trait tens of thousands of years ago. Today, in multicultural societies, clearly an extremely bad thing. Yeah. Even homophobia, from a very, very selfish standpoint, people want to have grandchildren.
Yeah.
But clearly that's also wrong. A lot of to sum up, a lot of our a lot of the negative attitudes which us humans have served us well in the past, but are obsolete today. They're kind of like the mental equivalent of an appendix or something like that. But anyway, to carry on, because but whilst certainly a lot of those attitudes have existed in the past. When it comes to academic feminists and the ones writing legislation and things like that, they're not fighting against the Male Disposability Act or the male disposability side. They're not fighting against the idea that they need to protect women. They're actively exacerbating those things. We've got the Violence Against Women Act, that piece of legislation which I'm fighting at the moment. Various examples from the UN and the EU. The feminist-run domestic violence industry. Ideally, I would really like to see reform in feminism. I'd like to see the moderates have a more active role and to kick the bigots to the curb. But unfortunately, I do not see that happening until more of the moderates wake up and see what the ones in power are doing in the name of their ideology. Then we're going to have to carry on fighting against them.
Yes, but two questions there. First of all, that what you were saying there about the moderates giving tacit support to the extremists. People say that about Islam. So again, the question of how true it is, whether or not these people are the quote-unquote leaders, or whether or not these people are the leaders, or whether they are the people who are listened to the most because they are shouting the loudest, whether or not they actually speak for feminists, whether feminists are disagreeing with them, that is a major issue. But secondly, perhaps more importantly, when you attack, when two radical sides are attacking each other, battle not with monsters, lest in so doing ye become a monster.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what I fear is happening to the MRA, because with the exception of yourself and a handful of others, people like Rocking Mr. E, again, his constant rants about the feminist, culturally Marxist, state-run conspiracy to strip men of their rights. Regardless of how much validity there is in what he says, it's difficult to hear anything but feminists are evil, which in turn, men are evil, men are evil, men are evil, men are evil. So many people recently, my friends Varmint Coyote and the Bad Cop 69, they've both basically turned around and said, look, fuck both of you.
Yeah. I can understand that to some degree, but I'd say there's a few differences from my perspective. I'm actually conducting a survey at the moment to actually see what the attitudes of the MRN as a whole are. So we can observe that we can avoid things of, MRAs are all like, and MRAs are like this, blah, blah, blah.
I would like to make a strong suggestion in that regard, because rather than attacking feminism, if the MRM focused specifically on raising awareness, not countering the accusations of the feminists, but, for example, male victims of rape, male victims of domestic violence, the fact that false rape allegations do ruin men's lives, not as a counterpoint to accusations made by radical feminists, but just stating it on its own as a fact, and more importantly, raising money for them, etc., actually taking positive, constructive steps to deal with men's rights issues, effectively ignoring the feminist ranting. And I can understand your point. We have to oppose the legislation in Wales, but the best way to do that is to just show the world there are male victims, just as many male victims of domestic violence, and they need protection as well.
Well, that's one of the things we have done, but we can't fight against it without showing the flaws in the ideology.
Excuse me. When I said fight against, but it's not as necessarily a question of this one piece of legislation or any legislation worldwide. This was the same kind of argument I got into with Watra Zazzle regarding the right to shoot people in Texas. It's the social attitude that we have to change, which in itself is a much broad. So just imagine it. You are the head of the Welsh Assembly. A feminist comes in saying men are bastards, all men are violent thugs. Pass this legislation saying that all domestic violence victims are women. MRA comes in and says she's lying. It's all part of a conspiracy against men. It's all there. She obviously just hates men, etc. Her statistics are flawed, etc. And they both start shouting at each other. He's just the head of the Welsh Assembly is just going to go with what he would have done anyway, which is his sympathetic gut, which is everyone knows that there are no male victims of domestic violence. So to wit. Option 2, the feminist comes in and says, look, these sign this piece of legislation declaring that all victims of domestic violence are women. The MRA comes in saying, no, there are male victims of domestic violence as well, to which the head of the Welsh Assembly tears up the legislation and drafts something better. It's, again, it's a question of philosophy and tactics and attitudes. But I do have to wonder seriously how the MRA or feminism, or any movements, how much they can achieve their goals by simply yelling at each other, by each side declaring, you're wrong, no, you're the bigot, no, you're the one that's causing the problem. And I've just realised we're probably passing the 15-minute points.
Okay, well, what the stance me, Tony, and the other people who are working on this is very much calm and rational. When we're attacking the arguments which are being presented, we're setting up a website which aims to look at positive aspects of masculinity and counter the false information which is levelled against us. We are doing it from a very, very calm and rational viewpoint. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we have to oppose the ideology which is fueling these policies, and in these cases, they are run and they are done by feminists. The thing which is being done in Wales, one of the lead authors is Jan Pickles. She's a radical feminist who works for the NSPCC. Now, the NSPCC have actually published figures showing that women are as violent or more violent to children than men are. But in this case, they are going completely against Jan Pickles has gone completely against the NSPCC's official stance in what she's reporting in order to follow her ideology. And there are some very, very deep institutionalized sexist laws against men which have been put in place by feminist ideology. Yeah. And yes, like I said, hold on, like I said, there are moderate feminists out there who I have absolutely zero problem with, but the ones at the top are doing that. Now, the way I see the MRM as being different, and yes, of course, there are some insane people within the MRM that you get with absolutely any movement. I've met people in the atheist movement who think all religious people should be shot in the head. Yeah. That doesn't mean there's anything intrinsically wrong with atheism. We're going to see radicals like that, but the radicals I see in the MRM, minus a few exceptions, tend to be people who are shooting their mouths off in comment sections with a small handful of subscribers. They're not the people who are actually active in getting petitions together. They're not the people who are trying to set up domestic violence shelters against men. They're not the people who are going ahead and setting up websites. They're not the people going out on the street and getting petitions together. They're a few people who are just angry. They may well have been through some incredible abuse by women in their life or something like that, and they just want to get onto YouTube or Reddit and just run their mouths in comment sections. But in feminism, it seems to be the opposite. It's the people at the top who are the radicals. The people, the moderate feminists. The moderate feminists do not have a large following. And the other problem is that occasionally you do get radical feminist ideas dripping down and reaching the moderates because they're so prevalent. To give an example of that, Lacey Green reblogged the In Living Project, which was the report which showed that that only 1 in 500 accusations of rape was false, which is complete bullshit, and that was reblogged by over 100,000 people. So, unfortunately, lots of the negative ideas which are being pushed out, the 1 in 4, 1 in 3, even 1 in 2 women are victims of rape, and now they're saying that 70% of women are victims of rape or violence. Those ideas, unfortunately, do trickle down. Those ideas are are cited in legislation which demonizes men, boys, and masculinity. And yeah, unfortunately, there are extreme people in the MRM. We can't tell people that they're not allowed to take the label. The best we can do is ban people from our own website for people who are actually doing things who are actually doing productive things. On the A Voice for Men forum, even if you say something which could be interpreted in any way as violent, you'll get banned. You'll get banned within minutes. On my website, it'll be exactly the same thing, and that's really all we can do. And some of the other differences, firstly, there's far more of a sceptical background from within the MRM. I think I've only ever seen 2 or 3 Christian MRAs in my whole time doing this. So we've got a far bigger sceptical background. We do try to police our own on our website. There may be some which really don't do that. So we are trying, at least the people who are actually active and actually are fighting for change in a productive manner, are actually trying to do what they can to counter that sort of behaviour. And when it comes to a lot of specific issues, we don't take a gendered approach. Rape is a human problem. It's not a women's issue. The only reason that we talk about it is that the men's side of it doesn't get talked about. But yeah, we treat rape as a human issue. We treat domestic violence as a human issue, and simply say that yes, there's female victims, but there are male victims as well, and they should be supported. I don't know if you've heard about. Have you heard about Earl Silverman?
No.
Okay. Earl Silverman is a Canadian MRA. Well, was. He committed suicide a couple of months back. He was fighting for the first domestic violence shelter for men in Canada. He'd been doing it for, I believe it was 20 years, and during that time, the Canadian government only gave him $700. This is what we're up against. My friend Swain O'Pie, who's published a rather extensive book, which I'll link in the description box of this video. He had his van smashed up 3 times by radical feminists during the course of one summer of activism. We've had the University of Toronto thing where men's rights activists were trying to speak, and the whole thing got shut down. We've been completely shut out of this debate while the feminists in academia have been trying to claim a monopoly on equality. And we just want our voice out there, and we want to counter the slander which has been levelled against men for the last 40 years in universities.
Okay, so right again, but I'm finally giving you a chance to speak first. Again, I've got a great deal to say in response. First of all, bearing in mind the fact that not everyone is on the internet, but the overwhelming majority of the first world population, never mind the rest of the world, has probably never even heard of the MRA or the MRM, because it's mostly an internet phenomenon. It's
Agreed. Sorry, can I just respond to that a second?
Yeah.
It's just very, very difficult to get people active on a local level. You know,
Yeah.
I've been basically trying to get a men's group together in Bath, and well, there's 3 members at the moment. But apart from them, we've been trying to do this for 3 months, and we've had absolutely 0 responses. We've had this running in the local paper for quite a while now. And part of it is basically reaching critical mass. When back a few years ago, when there may have been, 10, 20,000 MRAs in the world, we couldn't do anything on the local level. You can't do very much on the local level when you're the only MRA in your city. And we're now reaching a stage where, it's been growing exponentially over the last few years. And we're now beginning to reach the stage where local level activism is finally possible. But yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
Yes,
you continue.
Okay, but regardless, though, again, I would bring it down to the issue of the question is not the question is not what the radical feminists are saying. The question is, why are people listening to them? And again, I believe this comes down to the whole instinctive and universal stereotype that we discussed before in quite some depth. A radical feminist, the NSPCC publishes statistics saying that women are just as violent, if not more violent to children than men. I can speak for this from personal experience. But Jan Pickles, her name, is that her name? Yeah, Jan Pickles goes up to the Welsh Assembly and says all domestic violence is committed by men, and the Welsh Assembly believes her. Not because she's a radical feminist, not because they don't believe the NSPCC statistics, but because that is the assumption that people have. And yes, so that is a massive issue to be dealt with. It's not the question of these radical feminists rising to power because they are radical feminists, because there is a massive feminist conspiracy. It's just that they're saying things that most people believe on some level. Again, you were saying about it trickling down to the moderate feminists, and them reblogging the Enlivened Project false statistics without any scepticism, quite simply because it's so easy to believe. It's just easy. It's easy to believe that 90% of crime committed in Los Angeles is committed by black men. It's easy to believe that not all Muslims are terrorists, but all terrorists are Muslims. So, again, the issue of perception seems to be at the heart of this, because whilst I do not doubt for a second that you and many other MRAs are working positively and doing good, noble work on the ground to protect men's rights, to oppose unjust legislation and what have you, most people's experience of the MRA, mine in particular, is being called a mangina, being called a paedophile, being called a feminist puppet, and being told that I'm stupid, and that I'm ignorant, and that I'm a misandrist, and that I'm white knighted, etc., etc., etc. Now, regardless of whether it's a handful of extremists in the comment section of videos, or that it's the bulk, regardless of whether it's the bottom of the group, the leadership of the group, the majority, the minority, the extremists, the mainstream, that is most people's perception of the MRM. That is something that desperately needs to be addressed. Indeed, Varmint Coyote made a video specifically talking about this, citing you as the only example he could think of a good, rational and dedicated MRA, telling MRAs to have a conversation. You say that they're wrong, stop calling them a mangina, and explain to them why they are wrong.
Okay, time. And I do very much agree with that. A lot of what I see in comment sections, unfortunately, does very much reflect that. Some of it is the person's just an arsehole. Sometimes they think that the other person is too brainwashed to sit and listen to what the other person's argument is. And I do think that's a problem. I treat people as if they're rational human beings until that are capable of learning, until they prove themselves to be otherwise.
Yes.
And that's the attitude which I'm trying to put out there. But like I said, I still think that my point stands. That people shouting their mouths off are they're not people who've got a following. They're just angry vocal people. When it comes to the people making videos, most of them seem to be quite rational. Yes, there are exceptions, but people actually have to take an interest and look for them. If you go onto man boobs, you're not going to find those people. And,
exactly, but that is the ultimate problem. Bearing in mind the fact that as much as we like to talk about being rational and sceptical, even the most academically minded person is still led by their emotions at the end of the day.
P.C. Myers is a perfect example of that.
Yes, but either way, though, regardless of whether it's feminism or feminism, atheism, Islamophobes, Islamophiles, MRAs, what have you, if all they see of the MRA is man boobs and being called a mangina and a paedophile, what reason is there for anyone to look beyond it, to search through YouTube in order to find...
I can't do anything about what Namboob says. No one, unless somebody decides to flag him, which I very, very highly disagree with.
Yes,
what am I going to do about that? There's going to be people who say stupid shit, and there's going to be him quote mining the living shit out of people when he can't find anything to bitch about.
I understand that completely. But again, I was more raising it as the problem. I was more a problem to be discussed rather than an accusation at you personally. So,
but it's like, all we can do, which is something that I've been advocating for as well, is we just need to be a hell of a lot more vigilant in policing our own. And we have made videos arguing against the positions of other MRAs before. I've made videos talking about actual sexism towards women. I am doing my best, and from what I see from the people who are actually doing things rather than simply the whiners, they are trying to achieve something very positive. And of course, there's going to be millions of men in the world who are extremely bitter and angry, sometimes with good reason, sometimes with bad reason, and we can't really do much to shut them up. And also another point is that a lot of the people like that in comment sections are immediately labelled as MRAs, and they're used as an example of how MRAs are the most atrocious bigots, when they have absolutely nothing to do with the movement.
But again, how do we define a men's rights activist? Is there a homogenous movement which you have to join? You said before, anyone can use the label MRA. It's the same thing with feminism. Any whack job can call herself a feminist and go around insisting that all men should be castrated. And then people like Paul Elam, John the Other, Rocking Mystery, and Eve Man Boobs will could then hold her up as this is the true face of feminism. It's again, that was a hypothetical example, but still, we are discussing such massive issues here, my friend, to which there is no simple or single answer.
There isn't.
No.
Hold on. There is one thing I could respond to there. I've just got to find the document. But about last year, there was about 60 of us who got together and set out a document. I shall link that in the description box. About 60 of us basically got together and set out a document which basically outlines what seems to be the common consensus within the MRM. And people are completely free to look at that document. Actually, I'm not sure if that link still works. There is a YouTube video of it being read, though. And, I challenge anybody to look at that and find a single misogynistic word in it.
But still, noble intentions, noble declarations do not necessarily reflect the true intentions or declarations of the people themselves. Do not reflect the actions of the movement. Communism was never supposed to have anything to do with bloody revolution or genocide. How did I put it in one video? How is it that I can defend the majority of Christians and Muslims when their scripture is based upon homophobia, misogyny, and genocide? Because Christians and Muslims are human beings. How can I condemn libertarians when the majority of libertarians, when libertarianism is built upon such grand and lofty principles and ideals? Because libertarians are human beings. The true forced loneliness movements, they published their manifesto, their declaration of principles, what have you, and there was a woman who read it out in a YouTube video saying, this isn't misogynistic, they're fighting for equality. How do they define equality?
I mean, yeah, that is a good question. How do you define equality?
Exactly.
And within the men's rights movement, the general consensus is equal opportunities under the law, and I suppose there are cases when we would look at, where we would, look at the causes of inequality in other circumstances. For example, the education system. Clearly, boys and girls have the same rights within the education system. However, the system itself, over the last 20 odd years, has become an increasingly feminine environment, which clearly harms the grades which boys have, and that would be an example of where they have the same rights under the law, but we have to look at why does that system favour women so much more and favour girls so much more than boys, and again, hopefully try and.
And again, the pay gap, the great feminist issue. Again, equality under the law, but still, these are such massive social issues that again. Well, we can sit here talking about it until the cows come home.
We can.
Friend,
Yeah, the pay gap. I don't know if you're familiar with the work of Warren Farrell or not. No. He's done a lot of work into the pay gap, so have many other people. And it turns out that it's the differences in life choices which are the reason for it. Women on average work less hours than men. They spend less time in a particular professional career. They take more gaps due to childbirth and that kind of thing. And even if you normalise for occupation, for example. There's still a gap. You look at an occupation such as doctors, women are more likely to be psychologists, men are more likely to be heart surgeons. And, when you actually normalise for all of those factors, the pay gap pretty much disappears. And some studies show a 2 or 3% difference where men are paid more. Some show that women are paid more.
Again, that leads to the whole. Again, that is. The question, similarly, the question of why boys receive lower grades at secondary school and so on and so forth. Again, it could be a question of lifestyle choices, as you put it. Women,
agreed.
Boys going out playing football every night or playing video games every night, whilst the girls are actually studying.
Yeah, that's certainly a legitimate argument. There may be a factor there, but 40, 50 years ago, it was the exact opposite way round, and now it's swung way too far in the opposite direction, and boys' grades are continuing to drop. The divide is still getting wider and wider. I think one of the biggest factors is lack of male role models. There's far more fatherless homes than there are motherless homes.
Don't start to channel rocking mystery there.
No, I'm not going to be getting into that. But and then when you get into school, it's 90-odd% female teachers at the primary school level, and so a boy can get all the way to secondary school without having a single positive male role model in their life, and that has got to have an absolutely catastrophic effect on their school life.
As someone who never actually specialised in child psychology or anything like that, and it's been well over a decade, I can't necessarily see the arguments of the necessity of a male role model. That is something that is often presented, but while there may be evidence, there may be studies indicating this, there may be some empirical evidence indicating this necessity. It does seem to be more of a romantic ideal than an actual psychological necessity.
Well, I certainly think more research needs to be done on it, but I know if you compare the boys' fatherless homes compared with motherless homes, the boys do actually tend to do better when they have that male role model in their life. You know, yes, a positive example of example of masculinity. I mean, yeah, certainly more research needs to be done, and you know, just like with the wage gap, you know, my stance is, you know, you can't just look at a gap somewhere and go, aha, that's discrimination. Just because a gap exists, we can't do that. We can't do that with schools either. Yes. But there does seem to be a lot more evidence in support of that than there is for the wage gap. So I also don't think that you can necessarily look at the suicide gap or the homelessness gap or the prison gap and straight away just go, massive gap there, therefore discrimination. You know, discrimination is a positive claim which has to be verified. In many of those cases, I think I can do that. But yeah, that's certainly a topic for another video. We won't be getting onto that now. So I wanted to respond to some of the things you said a lot earlier in the video. I certainly think that victim blaming is, can be a very serious problem. I don't think it's necessarily as common as you think it is in many cases. With male victims of rape, unfortunately it is. With lesbian victims of rape, unfortunately, it really is, and that is something which truly disgusts me about the radical feminists. They, the fact that they ignore lesbian rape, just proves that they care more about demonizing men than about actually helping women. So yeah, I mentioned about the men being shown in the media and immediately assumed to be guilty, and then I think it is very important to show that yes, false accusations do happen, so people shouldn't be jumping to conclusions. Right, what else did you say? There are unfortunately certain aspects of law which do make it too easy to make false accusations. The rape shield law, which I mentioned, of the woman's not allowed to be portrayed, the accuser isn't allowed to be portrayed. The man is. You have to obviously say that, and sometimes it is, of course, the other way round. I think we've now redacted the laws in England, but we used to be able to restrict what can and can't be said in court. Sometimes it's legitimate, just because a woman has slept with 100 men or 1 million men, that makes no difference to whether or not she's lying that time. But there have been times when those laws have been horribly abused. So the woman could have been having an affair with that man, and that can't be brought up, and that can't be brought up in court. In America, Obama has published a letter to American universities lowering the standard of evidence to the preponderance, to simply the preponderance of evidence, which means that if somebody is accused of rape on campus, all that's needed is for the majority of people looking at the case on the campus to believe the woman and or the man sometimes, and the accused gets kicked off of campus regardless of whether or not he's found guilty in a criminal court or not. there's a few other links I was going to bring up. I'm going to link to the Innocence Project. And this is where, rape is a bit different from other crimes, not in a qualitative way, but in a quantitative way. False accusations are far more common for rape than they are for other crimes. 75% of people exonerated by the Innocence Project were there for rape or sexual assault. 29% in prison for rape are black, yet 64% of the people exonerated were black men accused by white women.
Yeah.
The level of prosecution for false rape accusations is horrifically low. Between January 11 and May 2012, there were 5,651 prosecutions for rape, which unfortunately is around 8%. But only 35 people were prosecuted for making false accusations, and even going by the absolute lowest numbers given for false accusations, the conviction level for false allegations is still drastically lower than the prosecution rate for rape. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, false accusations aren't something men talk about. The video I linked to you from Stephanie Nicholas, there's got to be around 10 or 15 people there who had been falsely accused, and not one of them was willing to do that. Was willing to do it with their name. Every single one of them wanted to remain anonymous with their story.
Yes. So, I'm sorry if this is a gross oversimplification. Please correct me. But
okay.
Your feeling that boys are being discriminated against in the British education system, is it a similar situation with rape, that in our noble need to balance the scales, we have completely overshot the mark and are going too far in the other direction?
I think we are going too far in the opposite direction. Exactly how far would be quite hard to say, but I simply think that we need to bring attention to it. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, the number of false accusations is drastically low, and you've got things like the Enliven Project saying that only 1 in 500 is a false accusation. You've got things coming out saying that 1 in 3 women have been raped, and 1 in 3 women are being raped. We've got this incredible fear, fear towards rape, and I think that that fear which is being put out is actively harming women. It's making women into a constant state of fear, which is going to restrict their movements, and that is harming women as well.
Oh yes,
false accusations make it harder for genuine women to come forward.
Yes, Onision, never trust any male completely. What the fuck?
Exactly, that's completely insane.
Absolutely. So, what the point you made as well about the majority of falsely accused men who had been falsely accused and convicted of rape being black, accused by white women. The whole issue of prejudice and discrimination and positive discrimination, is that the correct term? In our attempts to balance the scales, going far too far in the opposite direction, overshooting the mark. That is a common problem throughout the world. It does seem throughout the entire justice system. Yeah,
and that's one thing we're trying to raise awareness of.
Exactly.
And for the record, positive discrimination is the word which is used, but it's a term which I absolutely despise. Discrimination is discrimination. full stop.
Exactly. But
And
yes, so again, going back to the original issue, I'm putting this as a question to anyone watching this video, which will be uploaded on James's channel and then mirrored on my own. How can we address the problem of false rape allegations without increasing the atmosphere of victim blaming or suspicion against women, without making it even less likely that they will be willing to report a rape? At the moment, it's already her word against his, bearing in mind that the majority of rapes are committed against women by men.
No, wait, I have to stop you there. The only reason it appears that the vast majority of rapes are men raping women is because the way rape is defined doesn't include rape by envelopment. The 2010 CDC report on intimate partner violence and sexual assault, I think it's called, that will be linked in the description box. 1.1% of men in the last 12 months have been forced to penetrate against their will. 1.1% of women had been raped, and 80% of the men reported only a female perpetrator. So it's far more even than most people are led to believe. It's also, I've also got to point out, for the sake of intellectual honesty there, that it appears that men are more likely to be repeatedly victimised by a woman, whereas the lifetime figures are actually quite a bit lower. But the 12 months figures are roughly equal.
Yes, finally. Just having internet connection problems.
I think it's because I pulled the plug out while we were still in the call.
Right.
And yeah, just software problems.
Okay, so just you corrected me about the rates of rape there, and yes, but then again, that all comes back to the definition of rape. So,
it does, yeah. And yeah, I mean, unfortunately, like I said earlier, the definition of rape, unfortunately, discounts lesbian victims of rape. Yeah, I know. In one case in America, there's a state where anal rape isn't counted as rape. Most of the time that harms men. But there was a case which came out where a woman got anally raped, and it was just classified as sexual assault.
Yeah. But anyway, are we recording now?
We are. Are we? I don't know. Let's find out. We are. Yes.
Yes. So, again, returning to the main point, it's not just the law reflects the attitudes of society. So if the definition of rape on the statute books is discriminatory, only covering certain types of rape, then it's because the social attitude itself is fucked. And so how can we deal with this? Yeah. How can we deal with the issue of false rape allegations without making women even less likely to report rapes because, hey, it's already my word against his, or men less likely to report rapes. Hey, it's already my word against. It's already only my word against hers. I don't want to get sent to prison for making a false rape allegation as well. Well, that is a serious question for the comment section, by the way, for anyone watching this video. It's not purely rhetorical. If you have any ideas whatsoever, please put them down below. For false rape accusations, my answer. I'm sure there's also other answers, but the main one being holding people accountable for making provably false accusations.
And, that's not going to harm people who, that's not going to harm people who've legitimately been raped and but simply can't provide the evidence in court. That is, putting the burden of proof the other way.
Yes.
So only harming those who can have provably made a malicious accusation. There may be a couple of innocent victims here and there. There's innocent victims. There's innocent victims on the other side as well. But there needs to be accountability, because at the moment there really is hardly any at all, unfortunately.
Yes. Again, though, the question of how do you prove that a rape allegation is false?
Well, that's unfortunately, a very difficult question, which would take hours to answer.
Yes.
But,
how do you?
That's the simple answer.
Yes. How do you prove that a rape allegation is true? Again, the definition of rape, and also, how do we deal with the social attitude that a woman who wore a short skirt deserved it? You also wish to discuss rape prevention in this conversation, and but again, the short answer to that is teach men don't rape. And again, the definition of rape being non-consensual sex. Oh,
okay.
but she was drunk and she was wearing a short skirt, and she obviously wouldn't have been passed out on the bed if she didn't want it. No, that's rape. One of my friends told me last week a guy telling her a joke about how his best friend's girlfriend woke up with his dick inside her.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's disgusting. If somebody is in a relationship where they've given prior consent to wake up like that, then fine. That's not rape. But yeah, in that case, definitely it is so. And I think there's basically two different types of rape. There's the rape where it is, where the person knows exactly what they're doing. And is going out their way to harm that person. And there is also the cases of rape where somebody simply doesn't understand that what they're doing is wrong.
Yes.
To add something to what you're saying, teach men not to rape. Partially. Partially I think that's accurate. We need to teach people not to rape.
Excuse me again. Please excuse me for my gendered pronouns throughout this too. But people as a whole. This is a common problem I have in many of my videos. Just because I do not mention everyone and every possible, and don't say people instead of individuals, that doesn't mean.
I'm not specifically blaming you there, but I see that constantly, and we are unfortunately in a situation where that is actually what happens. There are talks on college campuses and that kind of thing, where they segregate the boys or men from the girls and women, and specifically tell them about how they about how to not rape. Like I said, I don't think it's a bad solution, but you need to do it to women. I mean, supposing, for example, that 70% of muggings are by black people, for example, people would be going absolutely fucking apeshit if on a college campus they segregated the black people from the white people and told them not to mug.
Yeah, but the counterpoint to that there, my friend, is, as you say, the two types of rape. The rapists who don't actually know what they are doing.
Yeah,
They don't actually.
exactly.
Yeah. Nobody ever no one, black or white, ever walks up to an old lady with a gun and says, "Oh yes, of course, you're giving me your wallet of your own free will."
I was well aware of the flaw in the analogy.
Just wanted to
As
point
I said,
out.
I couldn't think of a better one at the time.
Yeah,
but
just wanted to point that out in case anyone leapt on you in the comment section.
Yeah. But regardless, the educating side is going to deal with those who simply don't understand what they're doing is wrong. It's not going to deal with, the criminally minded rapists, as opposed to the simply naive or uneducated ones. But that I have no problem with teaching men not to rape, provided they
also teach women not to rape and transgender individuals. Aha! Yes, that's something. Yeah, that's another.
And intersex. You left those out, you bigot.
Exactly.
Anyway, but there is the other side to it. Unfortunately. I do think that we do need to educate people about what the possible risks are, and you can do that without victim blaming. You can teach somebody. Yeah. You can teach somebody to that leave your car door unlocked. You're more likely to have something stolen. Walk home at 2:00 in the morning, by yourself, you're more likely to get raped. Now, yes, I fully agree that if somebody chooses to ignore those warnings and something really bad happens, it's in absolutely zero way their fault. That, from my experience, seems to be the general stance of the MRM. But to even present that viewpoint that we should be we can educate people about being aware of their surroundings and that kind of thing. It seems that even presenting that, we're instantly accused of being victim blamers, which I think is incredibly irresponsible. There is also the point that going overboard on that approach and saying, watch out, don't go out after dark, don't wear the
Anisian approach. I made a video. Apologising for rape is a crime of power. Again, how victim blaming, both preemptively and after the fact, is a form of terrorism.
Anisian is a massive piece of shit. I'm sure not many people are going to disagree with me.
But I'm not only talking about Anisian there, but society as a whole saying, well, if you walk out of the door wearing that skirt and you get raped, it's your own fault.
Yeah. Again, I mean, I don't know exactly how common that is. It certainly is a problem in some circumstances. I also don't think it's a problem specific to rape. If I got mugged, if I walked home at night and got mugged, same thing happens.
Yeah,
I know. Sorry, one more thing. People I know who have been accused of rape, they've been told that it's their fault for trusting the girl. It's a problem as a whole. I think educating people about the risks is, in a responsible way, is a good thing to do. But to, in hindsight, say, you shouldn't have been doing this, is absolutely fucking disgusting. You need to show compassion for those who are actually victims.
Exactly. Yes. So again, defining rape as any form of non-consensual sex, educating people about that, not necessarily telling men or women or transgendered individuals don't rape, but this is rape. And if you cross that line, if she, it doesn't matter if she doesn't. It's not that it's not rape if she doesn't say no. If she keeps silent, that's not consent.
Yeah. I'm sure you'd agree that people can actually can consent with body language without the verbality. Okay, cool. Because if we don't clear that up, people are going to accuse you of.
I'm talking there about the Facebook meme. It's not consent if you make me too scared to say no. If she's laying there like a plank shaking, going, yeah, please. Again.
She's not shaking for some sort of vibrator effect.
You just had to go there, didn't you?
Yeah, terrible. I'm evil.
And on that note, we're approaching the 15-minute limit, so is there anything else you want to say?
There was something on the tip of my tongue which has completely eluded me right now, unfortunately.
If you remember before you upload the video, then you can just record it yourself and add it as an addendum. But either way, though, my friend, thank you very much for this very enlightening conversation. You've put me straight on a couple of points there, specifically... forced penetration, men being forced to have sex.
I mean, it's not even just that. In America, more men are raped in prison than women are raped outside of prison.
That is one issue that we're going to have to discuss in another conversation.
And the other thing, lesbian sexual assault is as high or even higher than heterosexual man against woman. And, like I've said before, we need to treat rape as a human problem rather than simply a woman's problem, because that's hurting both sexes. Anyway, that's all I've got to say. So
yes, and I look forward to discussing further issues with you again, hopefully very soon in the future. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Bye for now.
Thanks for watching, everybody, and I'll see you soon. Bye.
Despite the seriousness of the crimes we've talked about today, women, you are more likely to get hit by a car than attacked by a man jumping out the bushes, and the vast majority of us men will never have to deal with a false accusation. Hating the opposite sex will get you nowhere. The real enemies are the ones spreading the fear and hatred. Don't allow them to have power over you. And maybe you will be one of the unlucky ones, but that is no reason to live in fear, as this will only hold you back from real happiness. Till next time, take care of yourselves and each other.